Today, all of us know that high-speed internet and smartphones are the in thing. And because of the presence of high-speed internet and smartphones, easily accessible, sometimes also very cheaply available now, not very cheap, but affordable, uh, almost everyone, I mean, whoever wants to have a smartphone, including children, are given smartphones. The thing about the internet is that it's freely available, it's easily accessible, and it's anonymous. So you can be on your smartphone, you can go to any website anonymously. No one will know what you're watching unless you want to show them. And technology, therefore, is making us impersonal and dampening our capacity for human connection. That is a known factor by now. One of the important examples of the way digital technology allows us to withdraw from ordinary interaction is what we are talking about today, pornography. Why? Because whether you like to speak of it aloud or not, sex is associated with the highest levels of intimacy and trust. Married couples will know that very well. It can be the culmination and expression of the closest human connection. It not only helps to reinforce the bond, the connection, and it also creates new life. That is the power of the sexual intercourse. Evolution definitely shaped this basic human drive to build families. Sexual desire is one of the most powerful motivational forces and has been essential to the flourishing of the human race. The earth knows, nature knows how to keep on allowing its beings to continue. And so the drive of sex is something natural, which nature has given to human persons in order to promote the species. Yet, pornography transforms that drive into a force that primarily motivates the completely solitary and unproductive activity of masturbation. Now, with that much of introduction, I assume that all of us in this group know what is pornography. Yes? Yes. In the next 25 minutes, I introduce you to three main aspects. First, what porn does to the brain, about 8 minutes, what porn does to marriage, and then what the church says about porn. In case there is no time later, I like to tell you that in case you want to learn step by step how porn is affecting addicts in general today, you could check out our Pauline's India YouTube channel. I have already put up 7 sessions there, and one will be coming up one of these days, the last session on solutions on how porn is affecting people today. The link is here, youtube.com, Pauline's India, for those of you who are writing. And or you just go to YouTube channel and search Pauline's India or Sister Joeyanna, and you should get those videos with that. Also, there are 2 books I will propose for your further reading: Raising Responsible Teens in a Digital World and The Tech-Wise Family. So these are especially dedicated to parents who have teenagers, adolescents in their families, and The Tech-Wise Family, how to keep your family safe from today's dangers of the technological world. Both these are available on our website, paulineindia.org. And you can also download our ebook app, Pauline India, for the books related, if you want to just read on your mobile. These help develop family bonds, and you can go to Play Store for getting them. My number is there, and my address is at Waterfield Road. On Google Maps, you'll find it at Pauline Bandra.
They must not encourage these
So with that, I go ahead, and if you want later, we can share the information again. Harvard University professor Morgan Taylor, in his book, Why Men Fake It, The Totally Unexpected Truth About Men, said, it's hard to know exactly how many young men are suffering from porn-induced ED, that's erectile dysfunction. But it's clear that this is not a rare function. This is not a rare phenomenon. About 15 years, more or less, since internet and smartphones have come in. It's not rare that many suffer from this dysfunction. Another urologist, Harry Fisk, wrote bluntly in his book, The New Naked, that porn is killing sex. He zeroes in on the decisive element, the internet. According to him, the internet provides ultra easy access to something that is fine as an occasional treat, but hell for your sexual health on a daily basis. These are his words in his book. May 2014, the Journal of American Medical Association published research showing that even in moderate porn users, porn use correlates with reduced gray matter in the brain and decreased sexual responsiveness. The study was subtitled The Brain on Porn. One of the lead authors and researchers said that could mean that regular consumption of pornography more or less wears out the reward system. What is this reward system in the brain? We'll see soon. Another research done in July 2014, Cambridge University, they offered more insights. They said, as a result of excessive use of sexually explicit materials, they had experienced diminished libido or erectile dysfunction, specifically in physical relationships with women, although not in relationship to explicitly sexual material. That means their connections with women, with real women, was their connection with real women was getting affected. So friends, at this forum, we are discussing exactly this, that our brains are not fixed. They change according to the stimuli they get. And the stimuli they get condition the brain. Conditioning in the sense that they are able to respond in a particular way to screens, and correspondingly their response is affected to reality and to real persons. That is what the effect of pornography, the effect of screens does to our brain. Let me begin by something funny. It felt funny for me. Have you heard of the Coolidge effect? Some of you might have heard about it. Well, it goes like this. You drop a male rat into a cage with a receptive female rat. First, there is a frenzy of copulation. Then, progressively, the male tires of that particular female. Even if she wants more, he has had enough. However, replace the original female rat with a fresh one, and the male immediately revives and gallantly struggles to fertilize her. And you can repeat this process with fresh females until he is completely wiped out. It was done with rats. It seems funny.
Sad.
But of course, it is nature's way of the sexual drive, as I've said already before. It's nature's way of pushing the particular species. But human beings are definitely more complex. Is there some problem? I can hear some. Okay. Maybe we can all mute our mics. Obviously, human beings are more complex. For one thing, we are among the 3 to 5% of mammals with the capacity for long-term bonds. Yet, sexual novelty can enthrall humans too. That we all know. Sorry, I think I... So, what is behind this appreciation for novelty? For something new? Whatever it is what propels internet porn use in addicts. What is it that powers the lure for novelty at the physical level? Any answers? If your mics are not muted. Dopamine. Yes, dopamine. The desire and motivation to pursue sex arises from a neurochemical called dopamine. The primitive circuits in our brain, govern our emotions, our drives, our impulses, and even our subconscious decision making. So, dopamine electrifies the centerpiece of the brain, known as the reward circuitry. This word came before, you remember. And it is where we experience the cravings and the pleasure, especially, and where we get addicted. At the top of our human reward list are food, love, friendship, and novelty. Well, these are the natural dopamine reinforcers, as contrasted with addictive chemicals, which can disrupt natural functioning of the reward circuitry. RC is reward circuitry. So when we say addictive chemicals is, for example, cocaine or heroin, some of these drugs, they are able to change our sex drives to some extent. So that is what it is saying. The natural dopamine reinforces our food, sex, love, friendship, and novelty. Whereas there can use other ones, what people, drug addicts use. Dopamine fires up for other emotions and stimuli too, like surprise, shock, anxiety, seeking, and searching. So the more curious you are, the more the curious, the aspect of seeking and searching for new pictures, new videos, that already fires up the dopamine in order to in your brain system. Yeah, this looks interesting. A beautiful girl, handsome boy, chocolate cake, Black Forest chocolate cake, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, that ride on the roller coaster, and binging on food, hamburgers, sweet donuts. Well, all these are examples of which surge the dopamine in our cells. So, dopamine surges in our system are remembered by the brain. So whenever there is a dopamine surge, for whatever reasons, because of your sexual activity, or because of your going for a picnic and enjoying yourself, or for having that junk food evening, the brain remembers that particular surge that particular surge of dopamine, and it tells you what to remember by helping to rewire the brain. So sexual stimulation and orgasm add up to the biggest natural blast of dopamine available to your reward circuitry. So that is why the sexual drive is something. That was already said before, and the married couples will already know about it. It is the biggest natural blast of dopamine available to the human person. Now that you know what dopamine does for you, you realize that addiction to anything is dopamine surges gone haywire or amok. So porn provides some of the requirements mentioned above, surges in dopamine. And since porn is a commercial business, what the producers do, they prepare their screens so well, they prepare their videos so well, lots of powder, lots of makeup, the lingerie which is the best, so that they keep users going on and on. Well, now we come to the first part of what I spoke about, the brain. What porn does to your brain, the brain's adaptation on porn use. The brain has a way of adjusting to constant porn use. Though watching porn for some has been a source of releasing tension through the pleasure factor it generates, with time, the brain begins to protect itself against excessive stimulation by reducing dopamine signaling, and you feel less and less gratified. That was happening to the rat because after some time it was tired of the same female rat. So with time, the brain comes to a level, it's called a level of tolerance, where unless there is more stimulation, there is something more attractive, it won't go higher. It needs a higher to be normal. A high becomes a new normal. So this leads to desensitization. Desensitization, which drives the need for greater stimulation. And so the vicious circle for wanting more and more to be normal thus begins. Now, Piles and Bridges had done research a few years ago on comparing behavior of those doing marijuana, the drug, and using porn addictively. So they did a comparison of those using the drug marijuana and porn. And they reported that addictive drugs and sexual pleasure are connected to the same mechanisms in the brain. So you can imagine, just as drugs can activate the sex nerve cells without actual sex, so can internet porn. So being addicted to porn, internet pornography, is as good as being addicted to drugs, according to Piles and Bridges. In fact, a study in 2013 by Eric J. Nestler informs us that the same molecular mechanism in the brain is activated in both chemical, that is the drugs, and behavioral addictions. The main factor here, the molecule which we talk is called delta phosB. Delta phosB is a key to this, and both substance and behavior addictions are similar disorders. Now, Christopher Oslin, in his article in the journal Neuropharmacology in 2011, said that addiction causes brain changes. I mentioned this, by the by, right in the beginning of my introduction, that addiction causes brain changes. Yes, it does. And the signs of brain changes are, you will see them very much if you have been working with drug addicts, if you have had drug addicts in your colony, you will have seen this very clearly. The changes in the behavior. What are they? The signs of brain changes are craving, loss of control, and negative consequences in the physical system and psychological emotional system. Craving, a constant wanting to have more, and a preoccupation with obtaining the next, you have to get the new injection or you have to watch a new video. The preoccupation with obtaining, engaging in, or recovering from the use of the substance or behavior. That is the first symptom. Loss of control in using the substance or engaging in the behavior with increasing frequency or duration. Earlier, the person would watch porn probably occasionally, just for a kick, maybe once a week, especially when internet porn was not there. There were only books. Once a month, probably when somebody passes on a book, but now it's free, it's available. But with addiction and with availability easily, anonymously, freely, the person begins to engage in the behavior more and more frequently and for longer duration, larger amounts of intensity, or in increasing the risk in use and behavior to obtain the desired effect. They would go through anything to go and watch the particular porn video, or in chemical, when we talk of chemical addictions, to get the particular drug. We would see this in persons. And the third, the negative consequences in physical, social, occupational, financial, and psychological domains. So that you would already see person, heavy porn users begin to lose weight, because there's lots of metabolic activity happening when there is lots of addiction to porn. You will begin to see persons losing weight. Then, of course, there are other social consequences, like you will see them not wanting to mix up with people. They want to be alone. They prefer to be behind locked doors, or they are hiding something. Also, lots of money is going. Sometimes, of course, where it's free and good, sometimes they become so obsessed with it, they even put in money into these hubs for in order to have cyber sex after that. So, and the psychological domain we will see in the future. So, besides this, the JAMA Psychiatry Journal published an article which noted that the more the porn, that is the higher hours per week or more years of porn viewing, correlated with the reduction of gray matter in sections of the brain in the reward circuitry involved in motivation and decision making. So the more the person watches porn and too much of dopamine is being pushed into the chemical system, into the system of the body, of the brain, the parts involved in motivating us, in giving us that boost every morning. I have to go to work, I have to do this, I have to cook for my family, I have to go and take my children to school or whatever. And even decision making, those parts are affected. The person therefore just doesn't bother about anything. Secondly, the nerve connections between the reward circuit and the prefrontal cortex. That is the, I don't know if you can see my screen. I'm showing the prefrontal cortex worsened with increased porn watching. Where the eyes, just behind the eyes, the brain, the part of the brain is where the prefrontal cortex is, and the reward circuit worsened, and thus it impaired impulse control, leading to increased seeking of addictive content despite negative consequences. To sum up, too much of porn weakened connections to the seat of our willpower, that is the frontal cortex. Yes, my friends, I was really surprised when I read this and when I was doing my studies that our willpower just gets weakened. So you can just imagine what happens to those who are studying and those who have a whole life in front of them. Even the family, I'm talking of married couples now, what happens to those? They just lose motivation. They lose the will to get their children educated. They lose their will to love their wife. They lose their will to love their husband, or depending who is porn addicted. So your willpower gets affected with too much of porn. So it is generally agreed that compulsive internet pornography watch is driven largely by tension and agitation. When I spoke to some persons, often they said that when persons are too much in tension, they have too much of stress, they would watch porn in order to reduce tension, to forget about everything, to bring in some pleasure. So the pornography has become kind of a pleasure, obviously, a pleasure, an easily available pleasure factor in persons' lives, when otherwise they would just watch TV. Now it's just watch porn. So the online fantasy of sexual excitement produces an altered state of consciousness that becomes associated with tension reduction and relieving feelings of guilt. We forget about everything, nothing matters. I'm relaxed. Anxiety or depression. However, as focus changes, the addict limits authentic human relationships. As I already said, interest in the real partner slowly diminishes. Interest in the family itself becomes less. So automatically human relationships are on the downfall. So porn, as I said just a minute, porn leads to a draining of energies, and sex between couples actually helps reinforce close human connections, helps create new life. But what porn does, it leads to a solitary and hopeless draining of energies and breakdown in human connections. All the energies are lost in watching porn because a lot of energy goes, metabolic activity is very high. So there is no time, no energy left for real sex. So the victim gets convinced that lovelessness is okay. as long as I am enjoying porn. And that being spiritually inactive also is okay. It doesn't matter if my spirits are down. I'm enjoying when I'm enjoying. That becomes a tendency, a constant tendency of the person who is watching porn. The loss of attraction to real partners, delayed ejaculation, or complete inability to orgasm during sex, allowing new sexual tastes as curiosity scaled through porn fetishes, and even unaccustomed premature ejaculation become the new normal. So the web is rampant with, especially the YouTube channel is rampant with a whole lot of porn if the person wants to search for it. And there are always new, and that is what the porn producers know. They know the novelty is what runs their business. Novelty is what runs their business, and porn addicts fall for this.